Hello, everyone. Welcome to now third edition of the PIPPAMS X Ladder webinar. We're very excited to have you all here. And for this webinar, we'll be focusing on the topic of building an international profile, specifically through the lens of internships. Many of you students must be wondering how internships specifically play into this role when we're all trying to go abroad and get into all these foreign universities. And today I have two very talented panelists joining us, and I'll just get started with the introductions. First and foremost, we have Krithvi here. Krithvi is a University of Amsterdam alum, where she contributed to the critical evaluation of curriculum and teaching methods. Over the last 5 years, she's been at Essai, where Krithvi, again, has worn multiple hats. As the founder and the former head of the research and analytics team, Krithvi played a key role in analyzing data-driven student admission outcomes. And over the last 2 years, Krithvi has taken the helm as the head of program and partnership at PIPPAMS, where they've been instrumental in developing the platform into a dynamic space for high school students to explore extracurricular opportunities. Thank you so much for joining us, Krithvi.
Thanks again. Thank you so much for having me.
Next up, we have Jahan. Like again, Jahan here is a NYU alum and a former project manager for the New York Times. During her tenure at NYT, she played an integral role in launching various programs to create and lead multiple fellowship and internship opportunities for young talent. And she's always been a very strong proponent of the immense value and impact of real world experiences. She's currently leading growth at Ladder Internships, and having been involved in building the program from absolute scratch, Jahan has witnessed numerous student benefits from their internships and has a very keen sense of the value of real world experience in a student's journey. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jahan.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us on this Friday evening. We're looking forward to, engaging in conversation, diving deeper in what Sagan very nicely just introduced with the both of us, and also answer all of the questions you might have about benefits of internships, breaking international borders in the world we live in today, how to build your profile, etc. So thank you for your time, everybody in the room. Looking forward to this together.
All right. We have some questions prepared for our two panelists here, post which we'll be taking some questions from the audience as well. My first question is directed a bit more towards Jahan, where I assume this is her specialty. Jahan, our first question is how exactly, if you can give like a brief, how can an internship help with a student's profile? As let's specifically talk about young high school students here.
Yes, absolutely. No, that's a great question. I think a bunch of you in the room might be thinking the same thing. When you think of an internship, one sometimes thinks, wrongly so, that it's something that is much later in my life, or, oh, when I'm older, or when I'm in college, or maybe even post-college, it's something that I can pursue. But I think now it's no hidden fact that the world is only getting more and more competitive in multiple ways, and there are different ways in which students are choosing to stand out. In some forms, it can be research, and some it can be summer programs, which are all great. But a really, really, frankly, sometimes overlooked option that is quite accessible and really gives you real world knowledge, experience, exposure is doing something like an internship. And it helps build your profile in multiple ways. One, it helps you actually, on the academic level, when we're sitting in our classrooms, we're like, oh, I think I like the subject, or maybe I like what I'm learning with this teacher. So I think I want to pursue something like this. Or, through conversations with our parents or through family, like what we see other people do, we think that maybe that's something that I want to do. But you never really know what it means to be working in a specific space until you try it out. And for example, I can be vague about it and I can say, okay, right now I love what AI is doing. I think it's so exciting. AI is the future. I'm hearing this everywhere. But what exactly can one do in AI, right? There's a range of different things. AI is such a vast space. There are tools that we are starting to learn slowly, but maybe through something like an internship, you can really dive deeper into what are the specifics of this area. What about this area do I even like or not like? And then you can make a better informed decision. So not only are you going to, in the end of the day, have a stronger profile saying, I worked on this X, Y, and Z project with this particular real world space, but you're also going to have a better understanding of what you're bringing to the table in terms of what you're interested in and also where your strengths lie. So I always recommend to students that it's never too young to start. I wish I had started much younger than I did, and if I could go back and like tell all the students that it's really good to start as soon as you can and take up as many of these real world opportunities as you can. And internships are probably the best and the frankly the easiest way in a short period of time to get that exposure, to get that mentorship that will only serve you, not only setting you at a bar above some of your peers and your colleagues, but also giving you that very important insight into yourself, which the sooner you know, the better. So the sooner you start, the better, so you can make better informed decisions in that space.
That's really interesting.
Exactly.
Like that. Yeah.
Awesome.
I think it's something that I also sort of missed as a student, where I didn't even know that this was an option available to me.
Exactly.
And I think even Prithvi, like when we're working on that side of things, where we were like seeing how student profiles shape up, I feel like Prithvi, if you had anything to chip in regarding how exactly the internships become valuable, let's say in like student enrichment.
Right. I think what Jahan said is very valuable that perhaps we're entering into a very competitive space where students are starting with internship enrichment very young, which is a good thing, definitely. At the same time, I do want to point out that it's also a space for exploration. While the competitiveness is rising, what I'd like to say here is that it's also a matter of exploration. The fact that at this age, you're getting an opportunity to experience something that adults usually get exposure to. So while I agree with Jahan that this is a competitive space, I don't think it should be looked at only from a competitive lens. It needs to be looked at from a value adding lens. Saying that, I think I really like what Ladder does with these internships, and I'll tell you exactly why. Within our networks, Jahan, I don't know which high school you went to. I certainly went. Sorry?
I went to Jamnabai in Mumbai, which a lot of the students might be familiar with. Jamnabai
Right.
School. Yes.
I went to Shriram. So we, of course,
Yes.
we went to
Yeah.
these circles where they are influential spaces, let's just put it that way. And we did have access to very what do you call it, very private networks or very kinds of exclusive networks. But
Yes.
what happens is that while these networks are good, they can limit you from creating value, because most network related internships essentially boil down to a favor that a parent's friend is doing for you, a friend's parent is doing for you, these all these kind of things that are coming about. And this is why I'd like to talk about what makes an internship valuable. And in this case, let's take Ladder as an example. That firstly, there are structured projects and goals. You have tasks every day. You're coming in, you're reporting to someone. There's, of course, you're accountable for something important within the company space itself. Second, I'd like to say is mentorship, that while someone is managing you, they do know that you are at a certain age, you are at a certain academic level, and that means that they can approach you with that lens of communication, right? Because internships, like Jahan said, can become very rigorous spaces, but right now we're trying to see it as an exploratory thing as well. And the third, I'd say, is tangible output. Whether you're working on some kind of research report, or you're presenting to a board, you're prototyping something, it can be anything. But I think these three things is something that's really important when trying to assert whether an internship is valuable or not. And I think that's what Ladder does a very good part at. Yeah.
Yeah, no, if I could just take a second to add, I fully agree with everything you said. And it is that thing we all sometimes feel like, oh, internship, maybe I'll know someone or I'll ask somebody, to sit in on the few meetings, maybe intern for
Right.
some time. But what that really is actually not an internship at the end of the day. Very rarely are
Exactly.
we at this young age, as high school
Yeah.
students, be trusted, in these rooms. Or of course you get to shadow, you get to listen in, you get to maybe take notes, you maybe do some basic contribution, but very rarely will you actually own your own project, which you rightfully said, whatever it is at the end of the day, like maybe it's a market research that you've done, maybe it's
Right.
coding part of an app, maybe it's coming up with a marketing campaign, maybe it's literally you're understanding how to clean data and presenting a data dashboard. So
Right.
depending on whatever your field of interest might be, it's very difficult to firstly find the exact intersection of what you're looking to get into, and then to, as we
Tangible.
like to say here at Ladder, get your hands dirty doing something of real world importance and impact. Because as a young student, you're used to sitting on the side in the room, and watching everybody, but that's maybe to an extent just a certain amount of helpful. There is far more that one could be doing to better aid, their own processes. Exactly as you said, not just to add to this, oh my God, in this competition, how do I
Mhm.
stand out? But also,
Right.
much more importantly, you're getting that mentorship directly and getting that tangible outcome, which hopefully you can use in your college apps. You can use it in your conversations and interviews, all of those things. Even when you're talking to counselors, you can impress them with like, hey, I've already done this, so I have this, and I want to further dive deeper into this. So it
Right.
just gives more value add, as you said, for the student.
Absolutely. I think the tangible is the key word here, that there's something
Yes,
that you take home with you as a part of your
absolutely.
experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and coming back to ladder again, I feel like now that we're talking about ladder here, I feel like a lot of students will have this question that what about the fact that the ladder internship is virtual? And some
Yes,
people might be a little hesitant about that, and they might be
yes.
comparing it to an in-person experience as well. And maybe you could elaborate a little bit.
Yes. No, that's great. Thank you for that question. Yes, Ladder Internships does offer entirely virtual programs. So the students do not have to go in person to an office or interact with the people in person. It's all on Zoom.
Hmm.
And you are right. Some of you, in the room, sometimes when you talk to your parents about it, your friends about it, they might say, oh, but like, how much would I learn in a virtual environment? Or like, how is it going to be if I'm sitting in front of my screen? And I know we've all become a little bit since COVID, we've had to force ourselves to do a lot of things on Zoom that we were hoping we could still do in person. And I am one who completely understands that in a lot of ways, I wish that we all were in person, in a conference room right now. But then there are also some undeniable, huge advantages to the virtual nature of this internship. Just like now, we're all sitting in this room, possibly across different cities or even in the same cities across different areas, and we're able to engage in such a conversation. I know the three of us are in different cities right now as well. And this is just talking in terms of cities. Now, when it comes to internships, there is so much talk every day. The global climate is changing with politics, etc., happening of like, oh, now where should I focus? Should I go to the US to study? Should I go to the UK? Should I now explore Canada? Should I maybe look at Singapore itself? Should I maybe stay local now and, maybe pursue my master's? There are all of these new questions coming up. And at a time when maybe earlier you had decided, okay, this is where I want to go. Now you're maybe starting to question or you think through all your options. Something like Ladder, by offering you this virtual access, frankly gives you a very easy way to gain exposure into a specific country that you might want to pursue. So we have startups with internship projects across, frankly, all the countries that I just mentioned and many more as well. So let's say today, if you're sitting in India and you think that, I do want to get some exposure in the US because I think that that's where I want to end up. I want to know what it's like to work in environmental sciences in the US. Is it worth it? Is it something that I want to pursue? By doing a program with Ladder, you can be sitting wherever you are, not having to stop school, not having to stop extracurriculars, not having to stop anything else that you have going on, and you could still very much be engaging in an internship with a startup that's in the US in the field that you're looking to work with. So you're getting access to this expert, this mentor, the founder of that startup who comes from certain academic backgrounds and professional backgrounds that maybe you are also looking at in some possible way, and you're getting to get one-on-one time with them from the simplicity of your home, just
Mm.
connecting to them on Zoom and getting that mentorship. And then I've really learned in my short tenure so far, or call it long compared to the students in the room, that there's no global borders are honestly, so you can really exceed your sort of capacity to meet people when it comes to Zoom. I've had
Mm.
and forged relationships with mentors on Zoom that I've taken in person several years later, that have helped me in so many multiple ways. And that's what we want the students to take advantage of, that without having to spend a ton of money and a ton of time to relocate to specific regions, to try to like do these summer programs, trying to figure out what it means in
Mm.
person, you can gain that access sitting in your home through the ease of Zoom, through the ease of technology. Let's use it to our benefit while we can. And I mentioned an example in the US. This is true for any country. Tomorrow, you might want to do something, you know, today there's all of these tricky things about the UAE, can you fly there, etc. But there are startups that are in the UAE that are functioning, that do have students looking, they're looking for students to do
Mm.
internship projects with them. You could be sitting in the safety of wherever you are and engaging in a very, very good project
Mm.
with them on Zoom. So benefits of virtual, and as I mentioned, you can balance this along with everything else going on. We all discussed this at the beginning of the call, is that we don't want this to
Yeah.
be added to your list of, oh my God, there's so much I have to do
Yeah.
and it's also competitive. No, that's not the point. This is meant to be something that adds to the rest of your life. So we're flexible here. You have weekly meetings with your manager, but they're based off of your timings. They're based off of what you prefer. And you don't have to be online 9 to 5, like an in-person capacity. You don't have to show up, clock in at a certain time, clock out at a certain time. No, you can be doing kind of like homework. You're assigned your
Mm.
tasks, you can do it when you feel like you have the time. Literally actually learning from this
Mm.
experience, and not feeling like it's yet another thing to add to my to-do list. So for all
Mm.
Yeah.
these reasons, virtually, I think there are benefits to doing an internship in the virtual environment for sure.
Well, this is
Mm.
interesting. I'd just like to add something here. We're all discussing what are the, sorry, I can hear my voice bounce
Little
back.
bit of an echo. Yes.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, it's good
Yeah.
now.
All right. Lovely. Yes, so while we're all talking about, the benefits and perhaps some of the not benefits of a virtual internship, I would also like to add that perhaps the virtualness of the workplace has become a reality now.
Very true.
And
Yeah.
that's something that we do need to accept at some point, right, Jahan? I think
True.
our careers have been virtual our
Yes.
entire lives. And we've been working for about 5 to 6 years now. So there's definitely there is a truth in the fact that people are working virtually across domains, and irrespective of whether this is an internship or not, people at very, very high levels are also doing virtual work. So definitely, while in-person spaces are good, there's also, like Jahan said, there's political instability at the moment, there's climate instability at the moment. Professional spaces are going to be virtual, and that's a truth that we have to accept. So definitely, I think ladder positions itself really well in that sense, because there are no kind of physical barriers. And that is what all or mostly all professional spaces are doing at the moment, except for like perhaps emergency response teams such as
Right.
doctors or police officers. It's something, of course, we cannot take offline.
Right.
But the stuff that can be offline, people are going for it. They don't want big losses. Just imagine something happens and offices are being shut, no one's coming into office, no work is happening. So
Yeah.
this is the reality of our times, and this is how it's going to be perhaps in the near future as well.
Yeah.
So this is a great start for that. I don't think that we
Yeah.
should be focusing on the cons here at all. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you raised such a good point, because I completely see it. The future of work is virtual. You are so right.
Yeah.
We've had in-person capacities really reduce. In fact, I'm so glad you raised this because Ladder works with around 400 different startups. And I have to tell you, 98% of them work
Right.
remotely, entirely remotely, like they don't have, yes, some of them might have hybrid models, but even that is, primarily remote, where there's some in
Right.
person and there's, so it really is the future of work. And it's maybe not something to shy away from or something to feel like, it's not the same as in person. In fact, in some ways, there's a lot more benefits to it.
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely. I think people are also asking questions in the chat right
Yes. So we
away.
take them towards the end of the call, Jahan.
Yes, that sounds good. Let's
Thanks,
do
Jose.
it.
We'll just get back to this once we finish with this. Thanks.
Yes.
Certainly, like great points. I feel like accessibility, what we used to call accessibility, is now becoming the norm, which makes
Yeah,
things like really it's sort of a game changer for not just internship but our careers in general.
absolutely.
Um, like again, like maybe going into this topic a little bit more, and I'd like Prithvi to take over a little bit here. Um, we had a question I feel like a lot of students might have in their minds, whether or not it's better to focus on a particular field when finding internships, or is a jack of all trades approach a little bit better before you're entering university and 100 different you're starting out a major and a lot of priority changing. So while you're in school, what is the best
Right.
option here?
Okay, that's actually an excellent question because now we're, I think, shifting away from the fact that whether an internship is useful or not, but rather to what is a quote unquote good internship, right? So let me first leave you with a quote. And Jahan, I think you're going to find this really interesting. Sorry, not a quote, a stat by Stanford's Design Lab, actually. So they kind of inferred that about 80% of students in the US, they don't pursue a career in the subject that they majored in college.
Mm,
The 20% who do end up, of course, going to really strict fields where like degrees are super like
right,
imperative, right? You can't
right.
become a doctor without having a degree. You can't um, get into the big four without an MBA, for example. But this is really interesting, and I think we are also live examples of that here. I don't think any of us are doing whatever we majored in. I think all of us can say that.
Yep.
Yes, very true.
All of
Yeah.
us can say that. But what I found interesting about the stat was essentially that people at all ages are trying multiple domains. And it's not random, but it's with some intentionality and with some direction. And this is really interesting because, okay, let me take an example. Let's say if you're a math student, Jahan, um, you are not going to find an internship with integers. You are not going to find an internship with doing
Right,
algebra,
right.
right?
Yeah,
What you perhaps would get is some kind of quantitative work in the research
right.
field, for example, or perhaps even some kind of statistical work, accounting work, finance work, but you will never find a job that says math unless you're a mathematician, a literal
Yes,
mathematician writing books, right?
yes,
So this is interesting because I just want to say that don't limit yourself to a particular subject thinking that that's all you need to do in order to major in mathematics at Stanford, for example, right? There are a
right.
lot of different ways in which you kind of navigate this. Um, so I won't, so again, like you asked, like, is it better to find a particular field or is a jack of all
Mm,
trades approach better?
mm,
I'd like to flip the question and be like, you need to be exploring everything with a focused mind.
Yeah,
Um,
mm,
you as a math student doing perhaps a fashion internship can also be interesting if you can prove that these are your academic interests and these are the ways in which you think. Subject relevance is very, very important. I'm not denying that, and we might come back to that later as well. But I think the goal here is to be able to explore different things and apply the subject that you like and perspectives from that subject into the place where you're working or interning. So if a
Hmm.
math student comes to me in a fashion space and goes like, hey, I want to make the Fibonacci sequence, that's amazing. Colleges are going to be amazed
Yes.
by that. So yeah, explore everything with your interests in mind, and it's not a rule that hey, this is the I want to major in math. I need two math activities here, two math. Doesn't work like that. It's the story
Right.
that you're selling essentially. It's the story that you're believing in that guides like your career essentially.
Yeah.
That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that like a really like amazing way to flip the question and answer because just looking at the question just on its face value, I feel like would be a little misleading for everyone trying to uh build their international program. Like that was a really great answer. I think let's move on though to another question because we do have more questions pouring in and I want to get to them at the end of the segment.
Yes.
But I have one more question for Jahan from our end,
Yes.
which is, I think, a very common question, but always a useful question, is how do we make these internships work with, my schedule, with the student
Yeah.
schedule? There's school, there's extracurricular activities. How would you sort of balance the time now?
Yes. No, that's a great question. I'm still reeling from the stat that you shared, Krithvi. I'm like, it's so believable, honestly, that what you major in is what you. And this is one thing, actually, it's a great reminder to the students in the room that life is, you can plan and you can think of all these paths and you can think you're going to do a certain thing, but very often life happens while you're planning. And so in order for life to happen, you do need to pursue sort of the kind of experiences that you think will serve you best. You do have to sort of do the internship programs that you think will benefit you the most. And so that's why this entire topic, about the global citizen blueprint that we have sort of highlighted, and that we're talking about, is that you're breaking these borders and you're doing things like these virtual internships to really better understand yourself, to make sure you get all the best experiences under your belt, to really, really explore different relationships with people that you might not in your immediate geographical location. And then, yes, a valid question might be, okay, but how much can I do, right? Like I have these classes, you have whatever extracurriculars, there are like 1,001 things on my plate right now. So how much more do I add? I think the good news with something like the oh, looks like someone oh, they're muted again. But just to continue, the good thing with something like ladder internships, which offers you virtual internships that we've spoken about so far, is that it's very, very flexible based off of what you prefer. The idea is not for you to have yet another thing that's going to add to your plate. The idea is for you to have something that assists everything else you have going on. So by this, what we mean is that very at the beginning of your internship, we ask you questions like, what else do you have going on? What are your classes like? What are your extracurriculars like? Even personal commitments. Sometimes you might have travel planned with family or certain other friendship, weekly commitments, which is so, so important to continually make part of your life. The idea is not to stop doing all of that and make time for this. Not at all. It's yes, with all of this going on, can I also make time for this? And yes, you can. So we don't set, a minimum number of hours that you have to give to the program. We don't set a clock in or a clock out time. It's not like we want you to be on your laptops from Monday to Friday. That's not at all the expectation. I want to reiterate that this, we understand, is one of your first professional experiences at this age, and we want to help make it as easy for you as possible. So what that means is we set up a meeting once a week, at a time that you think you can make every week. And we make sure that that meeting is happening every week at the same time. So you have some structure in place that you can work around. You will be assigned your tasks for the week very clearly by your mentor at the organization that you're working with. You'll have ladder team members dedicated to help you as well. So you'll be able to ask questions as to like, how do I do this? Or maybe if you get stuck somewhere or something, you have that access. But the idea is that you get these bite-sized tasks that you're doing every week, and it's up to you. Like, let's say today, one week, you're like, oh, my Saturday is really free and I can spend 2 hours on Saturday getting these tasks done. And let's say the next week, you're like, oh my God, the only day I can do is Wednesday. No problem at all. It's up to you to find that time. We are here to help you figure out that time with you. You find the time to complete your tasks, and then in that meeting you're presenting it to your company, you're getting your feedback, you're asking your questions, and most importantly you're learning from whatever it is that you're doing and you have done. So that's the idea, that as a high school student, or even older, even when you go older and your schedule only gets more and more full, it doesn't mean that you have to get more pressure and bombard yourself with yet another commitment. It just means that with everything going on, it's still possible to engage in a very enriching virtual internship and be flexible with your hours and still have, Kriti mentioned this, a tangible outcome at the end of the day. You will still have, it's an 8 week long program. At the end of it, you will have a real world project that you have to show that you've worked on increment by increment, bit by bit, throughout those 8 weeks. So the idea is that you're left with, and I know some of the questions that have come in the chat, we'll address that also. Some of them even allude to this, is that what are you left with at the end that will, benefit me? And it is these kind of things. It is that very personalized letter of recommendation from the founder that you're working with. It is the real world project that you're doing with that particular startup. It is even the certificate that you get from the startup. And most importantly, it's the learning that you develop as an individual and the mentorship that you take beyond this. So as a high school student, no matter where you are in your academic careers, older, younger, no matter how much else you have going on, there's always a way to find a way to fit something that benefits you without it taking over your whole life, and adding that kind of pressure.
Jahan, I actually had a follow-up question to this. This
Yeah.
is thank you for sharing that. I was just also wondering that students are finding lots of diverse fields to do internships in within these days,
Yes.
right? Careers are becoming even more specific as we speak at the moment, and of course, you have to
Yes.
have a plethora of skills to function in those roles. But I was just wondering, also apart from like the traditional fields and stuff, you were talking
Yes.
about AI. Can you just give us a few examples of perhaps like company functions? What kind of companies are they? What sectors do they work in? I think that would be really
Yes.
interesting if you could tell the students
No,
here.
that's a great question, and I'm happy to. I can talk about this forever, and I know that we won't have too much time. So I'll start talking about it, and then I'll reshare some of my contact details. So if anybody in the room wants more specific examples based off of what they're thinking about, or just wants to see what is even the range of possibilities, I'm
Right.
happy to connect with them one-on-one on a call, or even send this information over via email. But just to answer your question verbally, yes, there's a range of options. Okay, we can start off with the generic ones like business, tech, healthcare and medicine, or we can dive deeper into the more specific intersections like maybe it's finance and tech. Fintech is a growing space. So, some of the spaces that the students work with are financial trading apps. Like in India, we have Zerodha. In the US, we have Robinhood. There are lots of these apps. There's one in the Switzerland market that is currently being coded, and there are 4 interns working together in this particular cohort to code part of that app for the Switzerland market. Very interesting for a student interested in the fintech space. They get to not only do research in the Switzerland financial markets, but they also get to apply this and use the technical tools and the user experience of how one would use the app, and leading it to a point of beta testing. And no worries if it's your first time doing it. It's 3 or 4 of the interns working together, direct mentorship of the expert in the field. And of course, you're not coding the whole thing by yourself. You're doing a segment of it with other people as well. Now let's dive into something, you mentioned AI. I'm actually really excited about this particular space because I think it's doing really impactful work. And I might have mentioned it to you previously in our conversations, but there's this company called Modulate, based in Boston. They're basically
Mm.
using AI to make gaming a safer space. So you know how gaming platforms use audio chats
Right.
and all of those sort of, sometimes there are inappropriate languages being used, or there's some sort of bullying going on, and that's a huge no-no, of course, in the gaming community. So what this particular startup is doing is they've developed AI tools that detects the use of any of this sort of inappropriate language and actually limits the progress of that player in the game. So it's a very cool way of making gaming a safer space. And there are students that have no Python or AI jargon in their system, but they're just interested in knowing about AI. They're working with this particular startup to come up with marketing campaigns. They're looking at how creatively AI is being used elsewhere and how there's responsible use of AI as well, and how that's something they can promote creatively. As I said, I can keep on going, and other students working with data with a particular startup called Earthly that's helping large multinational corporations reduce their carbon footprint, trying to make the
Right.
world a better place. This particular student, he got a messy data set. This particular company is expanding from Spain and Italy to the US. So they had all these potential clients in the US and lots of messy data and a huge spreadsheet of this is what their carbon emissions look like. This is their details. Can you help clean this? And this intern has learned working with them how to find the important trends in this data, how to work with certain tools. At the end, building an actual data dashboard, which frankly, I don't know how to build, and the
Right.
student has figured out how to do that with that company. And at the end, this has served them in creating the pitch deck. It served them in talking to the clients in the US, and it served them to inform all of their practices as well. So really, you get the idea. It's a range of different options. There are some interested in mental health. There are some students interested in psychology, aeronautical engineering as well, some in music. There's a range of different options that they can pursue. And as I said, I will reshare my contact information in this chat, so that if students in the room or their friends or their siblings, whoever might be interested to learn a little bit more about these specific areas or want to see. I mentioned at the top of the call, we have about 400 startups that we work with. So there's quite a variety of examples that I could share with them across different fields. I'd be happy to do so on email, on WhatsApp, whatever works as well.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, of course. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Again, guys, all the details for both PIPPAMS and for Ladder are in the chat box, so do give us a ring. Um, before we get into the chat questions here, I'd like for Krithvi to give us a quick demonstration of PIPPAMS and how PIPPAMS plays into the experience of a student looking for an internship.
Right. Definitely. So, as you all may or may not know, this is PIPPAMS. It is essentially a brainchild of our over a decade-long experience counseling students within SI being our parent company. And our tool essentially helps with academic enrichment, and internships are a big part of academic enrichment, one of the big parts of it. So here we have a bunch of different, so firstly, schools can sign on, individuals can sign on. We have a free subscription with some limited functionalities, and then a paid version that's only about 999 for a year. So it's not very expensive. But I just wanted to quickly take you through this space as well, because I wanted to get a bit more into subject relevance, but I don't have the time for it now. So I'll just quickly take you through it. But essentially, this is our dashboard, where I have some suggested activities, how many I've completed, what my report looks like, what kind of tasks I have. But essentially, as a student, I come here, I fix up my profile. Before doing any activity, we need to know whether you're eligible for it or not. So it's very important that we get like four key pieces of information. One is your country of residence, your country of citizenship, your grade, and your age, which is set through your date of birth. So once you have that in and you've kind of selected which subject you want to study, you get right into it. You can see a bunch of different activities that relate to environmental studies here. Again, this is the leadership activity. This is a Journal of Biology and Medicine, super important for environmental science. If you want to work with biochemistry, you want to work with pollutants in the air, for example, this is where it comes in. Math is super important for anyone who wants to study environmental science. All kind of data structures happen through math. The example I was giving earlier, subjects relate to other subjects. So this is what I wanted to kind of take you through. And yeah, we have a lot of activities here that you can filter out based on, whether they're virtual or in person, how much they cost, what kind of activity it is it? Is it a competition? Is it a student enrichment program? At PIPPAMS, we label internships under student enrichment programs because we feel like we don't want to use the word internship, but it can get a bit competitive. But yeah, and then you can just sort out results as well. And here's ladder as well. So the summer cohort one is the deadline's going to be coming up very, very soon. And the summer cohort 2 is also going to be coming up very, very soon. So definitely do sign on if you're interested in this. If you email my colleague Rajni here, saying that you attended the webinar, we can give you 2 weeks of free access, play around with it, the premium access. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so, so much for being here. And yes, let's quickly take the questions in that case now. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Let's get right into the questions. First question is from Jose.
Yes.
How can students showcase impact from a short-term internship in a meaningful way? I think very good question posed by Jose here.
Yes.
Anyone would like to pick this up?
I'd be happy to, and Kriti, feel free to add. I'm sure you'll have some insight here as well. But lovely question, Jose. Thank you for asking that. It's relevant to a lot of the students in the room. What we've discussed in this, conversation so far, you might have learned is that a big part of doing an internship is what you're left with at the end of it.
Right.
So whether it's short term, whether it's long term, the duration actually doesn't matter as much as what you make out of it, right? And what you have at the end of the day. So in general, when you do something like a short term internship, try to see what tangible thing you might have from it. So, for example, with Ladder, we've spoken a lot about how you're getting your hands dirty doing a real world project with that particular startup that you're working with. You're working directly under the mentorship of the expert in that field. So, you can showcase this impact very directly, whether it be in your college app, whether it be really in any other application that you're looking, maybe another internship, maybe a summer program, maybe something like that, even in conversations with people, where you're meeting
Right.
them, mentors at different universities, etc., admissions officers, etc., when you're just talking a little bit about what it is that you've done, what you're interested in, and you actually have this proof, you're like, hey, I worked with this particular startup, I worked with this particular company, and I did this with them. This is the project I worked with them for that period of time. In that moment, it's not actually going to matter as much whether you did that project in 8 weeks or whether you did that project in 12 weeks. The fact is that you actually did something with them and you learned from it. What is it that it contributed to you? What is the insight that you've gained while doing it? And these could also be reflections of maybe things you learned that you don't like, like an honest approach to, I did these things, I did this project, and I learned that maybe this thing is not so much for me, but I learned that I'm really interested in this other area. So I want to dive deeper into that, or I want to study that further, or, whatever your realizations might be. So that's one really great way to showcase this. And of course, I'm sure everybody at the SI team, the PIPPAMS team can contribute to this more, but whether it's in your activities section, whether it's in your personal statements, whether it's even the letter of recommendations that you can receive from these internships, they're all different ways in which you can showcase this impact. And then, of course, add it to your resume, to your LinkedIn's, add it to your profiles as something that you've done and that you're proud of as a
Right.
testament to your work. But yes, pass it on to you if you want to add anything to that, Prithvi.
No, I think you covered it all. Just one thing that I'd like to say here is that I think I've said this before as well. Don't treat it just as a tick mark. Even if it's
Yes.
short term, that's absolutely fine. But make sure what you're doing adds to your academic story. I won't even use the word profile here. Academic story in some way, right?
Yeah.
You're on your college applications, you're essentially telling them that I am this interesting person and I am this person who does all these things and I'd like you to consider me. And I think that is what's most important. They're not going to sit and see, oh, this student did it for 5 weeks
Yes.
versus 10
Yes.
weeks, right? It's
Yes.
that doesn't really play a huge role, I would say. So whatever you do, even if it's in a short time frame, make sure that it kind of plays a role in your academic story and that you can justify it at the end of the day. Yes.
Okay. I hope that answers your question, Jose. Let's move on to Harpreet here. And Harpreet, I'm sorry, I'm going to rephrase your question just a little bit here. Harpreet is asking, is it better to have one relevant internship or multiple, maybe not so relevant internships? Right? Is quantity, I think it's a classic question of quantity versus quality here, if I'm not wrong, Harpreet.
Um, Jahan, if you don't mind, I'll just like
Please.
to lead with that quickly. I actually have some research that I did for SI the other day, where we analyzed firstly where our students went. So tier one being the highest, tier two being the second, and tier three being the lowest. By lowest, I just mean that's within the top 50, by the way. So it's just that. But I was just quickly analyzing this that a student who is a tier one placement, so we studied 9 students in this who have been tier one. This student
Right.
studied CS, they did tech research and tech research. This went to UC Berkeley, environmental studies, they did community outreach with a company called Switcher. Um, there is Vanderbilt for economics, which is a great placement. The student did finance. The student went to JHU, biology, did it in psychology. What I was talking about subject relevance, by the way. This is what I meant. UC Berkeley, neurobiology, and they just did field operation. UC Berkeley, physics, and they did some product development. Doesn't even make sense. But what I'd like to say here is that they're all relevant in some way. They might not be an exact kind of replica of what you need to be doing, but just to be kind of analyzing this, out of these students, the average is 1.5. Each student did 1.5 internships. So between 1 or 2 internships is what I would recommend. And ladder is a great way to do that because they can help you with the subject relevance bit. Um, so yeah, Harpreet, I hope that answered question. Jahan, would you like to add on to this, by the way?
No, there's great data to show, and I'm glad it corroborates exactly what I was going to suggest. Is that it is important to do rather be relevant exactly in your field and do 80 million things that are nothing relevant to what you're going to be applying. We've already discussed just how busy everybody is now and just how much you have on your plate. So you have to be efficient and sensible about how you spend your time, right? So don't feel like I have to fill my plate with everything and do a million things. Be very sensible about which type of project you do. Like those student examples we just saw on the screen were very specific. Many of them had done only one. I think two of them had done two. That's great. You don't need to overpopulate with that many. And if you are able to hone in on exactly the kind of project that will feed your academic journey, your academic story, then definitely prioritize that.
Great. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for the question, Harpreet. Uh, let's move on to the next. We have Samira. And
Yes.
Samira asks, are virtual internships given as much importance as in-person internships by admissions officers? So I think it's a continuation of the early question and sort of tying it into admissions now. Would anyone like to take over here?
I can do a quick jab and then kick it off to you to add to it. It's a very really happy to hear these questions, Samira. Thank you for asking because it's a good thought. I think one thing to highlight is again, repeating some of what we said in the beginning is in your profile, right? When you're submitting it, whether it's in your resume, whether it's in your activity section, whether it's in your personal statement, wherever in your college app you are talking about your internship, the stress need not be on was this virtual or was this in person? Was this for 8 weeks or was this for 12 weeks or was this for 1 week? Whatever it might be, the stress should actually lie in what you did, the outcomes of the internship, what you learned, your mentor that you worked with. Those are the things that the admission officers are looking for. They're looking to read, like as Prithvi said, your academic journey. What's your story? Now, I won't learn too much sitting on the other end as admission officer if you tell me, oh, I did a virtual internship and then say, actually, I did an in-person internship. Okay, what is the internship, right? Who is it with? What
Yeah.
did you do during that internship? What was the project? So actually, the admissions officers, you need not mention anywhere whether it's virtual or in person. They'll just eat up your space and Yeah, exactly. It will take away your characters, that you have limited characters, limited words that you have to submit in your college app. So why, and I'm speaking from experience, I sent 17 college apps back in the day, and I completely get that, it takes a lot of thinking to what wording to use, how to present yourself. So don't waste that sacred space on things like highlighting virtual, highlighting duration, non-virtual, those kind of things. Write about
Right.
what is that you did. And if it's something like a virtual internship through Ladder, one thing I can guarantee is you'll have a very obvious project to talk about. You'll have a very obvious contribution to stress upon. You'll have a mentor who's highly impressive, that literally these admissions officers will feel very nice reading a recommendation letter from. And it will be personalized to your contributions through the internship. So those are the things that the admissions officers are going to be looking for, more than the nature of the actual internship. But feel free to add to it.
That's
Uh,
really interesting, Jahan. I think the idea that we are getting from this conversation also is that virtual has a negative connotation, right? And I just want to address that right now.
yeah,
I
yeah.
really want to because, um, okay, so I don't know if any of you have gone for summer schools, but most of the prestigious summer schools that are credit bearing, which means that you can transfer those college credits to an institution, are actually held online. There are
Yes.
very few for credit college courses that you can take in person. And that is essentially because when you're going for your summer school on a visa, you need to have an F1 visa, you need to have a certain number of credits that you're pursuing, etc., etc. Dilly dally. It is a lot of headache. All I'm trying to say is that most of the opportunities are now turning into virtual spaces, and that's not a bad thing. It doesn't take away the prestige. Let's not attach a negative connotation to virtual at all. Let's try to attach positive connotation to it and say that it's uh, admissions officers and the entire world does know that a lot of talented students come from Asian countries, come from African countries, and right now with everything going on with the geopolitical situation or perhaps the climate situation, it's difficult for them to travel. Most prestigious things are happening online because the most
Yes.
prestigious students are sitting internationally. So that's all I wanted to say. Yeah.
Great point. Thank you for
Yeah,
clarifying that.
great points, guys. We have one last question from Ira here, and I think we can wrap up then. It's a little bit of a technical question. But Ira says here that if I want to pursue my UG slash graduation from Indian colleges, which mostly look for at academics and marks, and then pursue my master's abroad, can the internship I do right now have a positive impact on my application and admission? Or will it be counted as quote unquote outdated and I'll have to do another internship all over again?
Great question. And I really love Ira, the long time thinking. And these are
Yeah.
exactly the kind of students that startups love to work with. I'll be very honest that, you're the kind of student that internships are very well suited for, to be honest, because you have long term planning. So, a couple of things that I can say to this. And then please do add, if there's anything that you think is useful to add, please do, is two things. One, uh, an internship helps you beyond just the admission process, in the sense that when you are doing your internship with this particular, let's say you pursue something right now and then you apply to your Indian colleges. Firstly, you can also use that in your Indian college apps and it can benefit you as well. But even beyond that, you create a relationship with this mentor that you're working with, and it's a one-on-one direct relationship. So right now, if you have the interest, if you have the little bit of time on your hands, if you literally just want to gain more understanding, I would say it's a great time to pursue an internship. As I said, I think one of the first things I said on this call is that it's never too early. I wish I could shake myself when I was younger and say, don't wait for the right time to do a certain thing, because you never know. Time is fleeting. There are a lot of things. Life takes over. Take advantage of the time that you have right now. Do the things that will serve you best right now. So today, if you decide to pursue an internship, I think that's a great idea, because not only, as I mentioned, will you be able to use it in your immediate applications, but that relationship that you build with this mentor is something that extends beyond just the internship. It's something that you can take forward, whether it is later on when you are doing your masters, whether it's, you never know, after your undergrad, you're like, oh, this is what I had planned. I'm wondering what I want to do next. We just saw some examples of students who studied something and then pursued something completely different. Maybe, you reach that point and you're like, I'm not quite sure. I would really love a soundboard. I would really like somebody who's an expert in this field that I thought I would pursue to give me that advice. This is a human being that you have, rooting for you. This is a human being that mentors you starting so young, that it's somebody, a relationship that we encourage you to take forward beyond. There are a lot of real world examples actually of students who've done the ladder internship program and created, they've been younger when they've been like, they've been in the ninth grade, they've been in the 10th grade. And then later on, they decided, oh, I think I want to go do my bachelor's. I have this one really lovely example of this one student who was working with this mentor who was really, his passion was in race car driving. And this particular student became so friendly with this mentor that he eventually in his life ended up going to Berkeley and working right next to where this particular startup founder was also working. And now he's working with him in person on his race car efforts. And he's doing this side job where he's getting paid while he's still at Berkeley. It's helping him with his CPT also in this particular political climate. So lots of benefits are coming out of an internship that he actually did much earlier than when he was intending to go and study. And I know you mentioned that yours is even later, perhaps, like post graduation, master's is what you're looking at. That doesn't matter. These relationships extend beyond time. It is something you can always benefit from. It is something that can always help you learn. And it's never an internship helps with admissions, but it also helps, as we said, with how you pursue whatever field you want to pursue, where you better understand what it is that I like to do. What can I use this as a trampoline to get other opportunities, other internships in addition to admission results as well. So, but I'll pause here and kick it off. If there's anything to add there, Prithvi, please
No,
feel.
definitely. I think you've covered it all. Thank you so, so much, Jahan.
Of course.
I'd just
Thank
like
you.
to thank everyone for being here as well. Yes, please. Sagin, would you like to wrap up?
Yeah. And thank you to both our panelists for giving us a very enlightening session yet again. This is the third edition, and the third edition is as enlightening and as informative as the first one. Thank you so much for joining us, our wonderful panelists, and thank you so much to all of you guys for joining us for the third session of PIPPAMS and Ladder working together. Um, I hope you guys have a wonderful day and good night or good morning or good afternoon
Whatever
wherever you are.
time it.
Wherever you
See,
are.
the advantages of virtual, the advantages
Yeah,
of virtual session.
the
But
advantages of
yes.
virtual sessions yet
But
again.
thank you so much, Sagan, for your lovely questions. Thank you, Krithvi, Pipams. It's great to do this again, and
Yeah.
we work very closely together for all the students in the room, and always here as resources for you all. Thank you for attending. And if you have any further questions, both the contact information for both Pipams and Ladder is in the chat. So feel free to reach out, and we would be happy to help you one-on-one or answer any questions via email as well.
Lovely. Thank you so much, you all.
Thank you very
Thank
much. Have a
you.
great evening. Bye-bye.
You.
Bye.
Bye.